Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Executive Espresso Break, where we deliver the caffeinated edge for scaling success. I'm Sam Palazzolo, and today I'm joined by Jeremy Balius, founder and managing director of Filament. It's a digital marketing agency based out of Australia that helps B2B tech leaders cut through complexity, execute effectively, and scale in crowded markets. We'll give Jeremy the opportunity to introduce himself here in a minute. So grab your espresso and let's get into some real strategies, real results. In this session today, we're going to tackle digital marketing that delivers, how growth leaders overcome the four biggest barriers. And by the end of our time together, you'll walk away with insights on, first and foremost, how to keep momentum in long, complex sales cycles. Second, how to close the strategy to execution gap. Third, how to build stronger partner ecosystems. And the all important fourth item here, how to cut through noise in crowded markets. So, Jeremy, let's do some brief introductions. Would you tell a little bit about yourself so everyone can kind of follow along with who you are?
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you having me on the show. This is so awesome. Uh, Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. I lead Filament. We work with B2B tech leaders, both in direct sales as well as in channel, to go to market more effectively. So we specialize in bringing products and service to market in complex sales environments, in partner ecosystems, and through partner channel sales directions. We've been working in this space for a number of years. We're based in Sydney, Australia, but we're working across Asia Pacific and North America as a result of this specialization, and we're having a whole ton of fun doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Again, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sam Palazzolo. I led a couple of tech initiatives to exit. We did two things. One, we formed a family office, and two, we formed a 501c3 here in the States. Our focus is on executive development, specifically through leadership development and executive coaching. We have taken organizations over the last decade from 1 to 10 million and 10 million to last year, we helped another organization cross over the $1 billion threshold. So, ex Deloitte, proven Deloitte like methodology, that's what we deploy. And the leaders that work with us, they achieve business growth. Before we dig into our topic, though, here today, Jeremy, I do want to tease everybody with a quick note here. At the end today of this espresso break, I'm going to share how we can spend 20 minutes together one on one, focused entirely on you and your business. It's something I rarely do, and it's designed to help you unlock growth where you may feel stuck. So stay tuned for that. I'll hit more on that later. But let's get into it. Let's talk about this first topic here, Jeremy, tackling long and complex sales cycles. Why are we starting here? Because I think that this is one of the toughest realities in B2B tech. Sales cycles that can run 12, 18, sometimes even 36 plus months, often with multiple stakeholders involved. So the question I've got to tee us off here nicely is, what's the smartest way for leaders to keep momentum alive in such long, complex cycles?
I love that we're starting with this one, Sam. It's not talked about enough. It's a reality that we face as tech leaders, but don't necessarily do anything about. The reality is that the majority of go-to-market campaigns tend to be monolithic and have a time frame attached to them. So we've got a core message campaign going out, and we're launching our product, and everybody's happy and enthusiastic. And then we enable our sales guys with battle cards and brochures and whatever else, and campaign ends, and then it's up to the sales guys to manage this long-term sales cycle on their own. And where we see massive turnarounds in the way that companies are effectively engaging with their target prospects and their ICPs is they're grappling with the fact that buyer committee sizes are growing. They are selling to a lot of people inside of their target customers. And there was a time where you had a single decision maker. Then there was a time where there's a core group of executive leaders, perhaps. Buying committees on average have been about 10 to 11 people. I was reading some research recently and talking to a couple of executives in the States who work in the enterprise space. For large scale deals, we're talking 20 to 25 members on that buying committee. That's a lot of hearts and minds to win over a long and sustained period of time, particularly if you're going to market in a partnership scenario where you're not a SaaS on your own potentially, but you are some type of provider who is partnering with a stack of vendors and or other partners to deliver some functionality to a business. And so you've got multiple companies needing to band together to then win the hearts and minds of 20 to 25 people. This is a complex sales cycle, as you've mentioned, and they're not deciding on the spot. You're not bringing everybody into a boardroom and getting them to sign after your pitch, right? And that really underpins how you've talked about the 12 to 36 months sales cycle. We're talking millions and millions of dollars on the line with decision gates throughout that process and different decision makers throughout that time. So what's the smartest way? We need to really break this go-to-market down into who are the different types of people and within those committees and start talking to them directly, either by way of digital content or by way of the channel of distribution of the go-to-market content. But I think as we think about them as specific people with specific motivations of behavior and specific risks that they face in their roles, we can start breaking down our value add of our organization direct to them such that we are winning them over time individually in the context of their reality inside their role, right? It's not the monolithic, here's what our business can do for your business in its entirety. It's breaking it down into how are we delivering value and protecting you and creating a reason for you to get on board with this. So if we think about the buying committees that early and we're tailoring messages to stay relevant to them, we need the go-to-market to be sustained for a lot longer than it has been. You know, the reality is we think about go-to-market sprints in the context of 30, 60, 90-day sprints, and then we're on to the next thing. And then you've got the potentially the SDRs and the AEs and anybody else on the sales side, BDMs, et cetera, who need to sustain that long-term cycle. What we really need is for the totality of the go-to-market to be considered across that stretch of sales cycle so that we're breaking down our go-to-market into the consistent touch points that can sustain that amount of time. And that's a transformation within a business's go-to-market because we're not thinking about it for that long and we're not pre-planning how can we sustain momentum for that length of time. And that's a missed opportunity, but the deeper we go into the complexity of the sales cycle and the reality of what that means for us and how we sell and how we go to market, we can start broadening out, getting more personalized and personable with the individuals in the buying committee, but thinking more long-term and how do we sustain their attention and sustain their buy-in for longer periods.
It's a great point. I mean, the complexity of the sale increases exponentially. It's just not a multiple when you went from single decision maker to maybe the core team to now some of these consensus committees of 25 plus individuals. I know you mentioned a little bit about, I look at it from an axis of urgency on one axis and how do you sustain momentum, what you were describing here. And it's different for each one of the potentially 25 different members. You almost have to identify within that committee ideal customer profile, that type of analysis therein. But I wondered, in addition to doing that, the follow-up question here, Where do you see companies losing the most ground during these drawn out cycles? And any tips on how it is that they can prevent that type of drop off from occurring?
Yeah, there's ground lost due to capacity usually. So it's really hard to sustain this because you have to think about it outside of the context um, of the people in your business.
Yes.
So this is a motion that is occurring uh, organizational wide for you. At the same time, you are tailoring this as you enter into larger deals, sales cycle opportunities. And within those, you're personalizing even more so down into the individual roles. That's not something a single person on your team can handle. And usually it's not a small team either that can handle this. So it's about understanding how are we scaling up even our capacity to handle this,
Mhm.
but within that have the control to understand what is happening along the way so that we're not setting something in motion, but we've either run off to the next shiny object, or what is usually the case, we are continuously bringing new products and services to market, but we can't lose the attention focus on what we kicked off prior. And the where we lose ground is that we're moving too quickly into the next things, and we're needing to retain the focus and sustain the continuity of the things we do kick off initially.
Yeah, it's almost an obnoxious approach to how it is that you have to sell today. I
Mhm.
can I can share this much. I can say that even with these long cycles under control, many of the leaders that I work with, they face a different problem. And that is that great plans on paper, they stall out in practice. So the
Mm.
reality. So let's get in here to topic number two, which is closing the strategy to execution gap. Closing the strategy to execution gap. Jeremy, my question, this one comes up in nearly every leadership conversation I have, like I previously shared. I know organizations that have smart strategies, but they stumble and some fall flat on their face when it comes to execution. So, my question from your perspective, why is there so often a gap between planning and results?
There is a gap between planning and results, either because there is no feedback loop to understanding in real time what is happening as a result of a strategic motion being kicked off, and then expecting great things to happen, and for you and then the team will come back and report on it, and there is no real-time understanding of what is happening along the way, so there's no course correcting, and it's an it's an expectation that things will run in an ideal scenario. And I don't think that's explicit, but I think it's just an understanding of we have put this robust strategy with all of our smartest people and all of our research, and this is rock solid. Go put this into practice. But that inability to course correct in practice means that there is some misalignment within the organization, or more broadly across the organization, that there is a we are setting this strategy in motion. The doing of the motion is divorced from that, and therefore everybody gets to point a whole bunch of fingers because nothing works out in the ideal ever, right? So, it's so I think there's that, but then I think the other real issue that we were just touching on prior to that is that setting a strategy in motion and handing it off to the team, there's no sitting around and waiting. They're on to the next thing. And therefore we have a compounding effect of strategic building within organizations where as they are continuing to strategize and launch and address risks and look at threat landscapes and build and build and build from a strategic perspective, the doers of the tactical implementation of the strategy don't have time to keep up because they're still on the last thing that you gave us to implement. And where this gets even more complex is if we were to shift into what I was talking about earlier around bringing this down into tailoring it for specific sales cycles in large enterprise or large buying committees, we have this further compounding effect of complexity of our sales cycle because no one can keep up with anything because we're constantly moving on to the next just by trying to keep up with what we're trying to do. So it's almost like a flywheel of complexity. And unless there is a practicable way for the feedback loop within an organization to ensure that there is no vacuum of strategy, there's no vacuum of strategizing independent from the implementation, but that there is a continual reaction, course correcting, and adjustment happening along the way. It brings your strategy out of this is the document that we've done and you now do it. And it becomes a living, breathing thing that is continuously being reviewed and adjusted such that a mission critical outcome is pursued, but the actual pathways of doing it are continuously tested and blowtorched along the way to be refined.
Yeah. No, you kind of tiptoed nicely into the follow-up question here of what practical steps can leaders take to ensure execution gets the same attention and resources as strategy. And I think the thing that you and I share is a military brat background, call it whatever you want to, but being exposed to a military background. And the thing that I learned in working with the Department of Defense and the US Navy, Marine Corps, when I lived in San Diego was that they had this really great methodology of contingency planning. In other words, if you are going to enter into that strategic doing, as you called it, you better run out every potential, every contingency that can come up. And I see that as a shortcoming that most leaders and most stakeholders in an organization, they simply don't want to do. And I'm wondering from your perspective, how is it that you can help leverage? Maybe it's I love the strategic doer methodology. How do you have more strategic doer as opposed to strategic reactive?
Yeah, it's you're right. It is a hard challenge to grapple with because you are leading your teams and they come with a level of expertise, a level of culture, and a level of having done the way that they have always done, and that's what their roles and KPIs are based on, and that might come with specialization in specific tactical
Mm.
implementation, and therefore it has always been the case that in our go-to-market motions we do it this way. And when there's without the feedback loop and without the ability of the leaders to think more broadly or have the access to the advice or other viewpoints that give them a broader view of what is possible and the way that digital marketing and digital sales and the way that demand is generated and the way that it's captured has been shifting so rapidly, they're generally just keeping up with everything. And that keeping up comes with what we were talking about earlier in terms of how we address roles in buying committees.
Yeah.
They all have individual concerns, and usually concern number one is keeping my job, keeping my income, ensuring my family's taken care of, all of the personal concerns. And then within the organization also there's a achieving of particular mission identified outcomes. But what does that mean to step as a leader, to step out and say, is this the only way? And is there another way for us that we have the ability to transition to over time? We can't execute change too quickly. There's people's roles on the lines. There is all the existing go-to-market motions that are already happening right here, right now. But for someone to think about how do we execute on these more efficiently, I think one of the most practicable steps to do first is to really look at the sphere that you have around you, not just within your organization, but more broadly and wider, and start having more conversations with the likes of people like yourself who live and breathe strategy across so many organizations and so many industries. You kind of been battle tested in a way that they wouldn't be able to hire outright as a full-time role within their business. But having conversations with strategists more broadly, I think will open up and broaden the horizons and unlock other pathways for them to pursue what it is that they're trying to achieve, because their strategy is probably right, execution maybe, but they don't know what they don't know. And I think it's having that broadening that'll deliver more insights over time.
Well said. I wrote down, this is a master class. The question that you're requesting that the leaders ask is this the only way?
Mm.
It's such a stinging question that forces people to think and hopefully behave different. I know I sat in on a podcast that was being conducted here with Dan Martell, the entrepreneur out of Canada.
Yes.
Just he wrote the book "Buy Back Your Time," but Dan talked during that time during the podcast about we've always had a difference between those that really identified strategy and those organizationally that did the doing. So we got the strategy people coming up with strategies. We got the doers actually executing the strategy. They're doing it. By the way, which one of those two, thanks to AI, are going to be diminished? Maybe at the Anthropic levels of 20% unemployment rate in 2026. I think it's probably going to take a chunk out of both, but probably
Mhm.
more the doers than the strategy identifiers. But the thing that Dan said that he was challenging his organization with, and I left there and I challenged mine as well, is the concept of being AI first. In other words, if you're going to come to a meeting, this is a great question that you bring up. Is this the only way? But if we can leverage AI first and put together a list surrounding maybe those contingency plans, you run them all out, but maybe you haven't been there, or maybe you haven't done that. And so, what else is there? And this is a great way of leveraging AI in a Dan Martell AI first manner. So, it's worth noticing. And that I think can significantly help contingency plan to close that gap between strategy and execution. Let's keep rolling here, though, Jeremy, because I know and you know that when it comes to revitalizing partner and channel performance, many tech companies find themselves over carrying their partners. They do most of the heavy lifting instead of enabling said partners to generate demand themselves. So, the question I've got to ask the expert, you, is what's the key to building stronger, more self sufficient partner ecosystems?
The way that an ISV, an independent software vendor, revitalizes their go-to-market through a channel program is understanding the motivations of their partners better and using that understanding to attract and close better partners. That is really easy to say and very, very hard to do.
Yeah. Do you, I guess this leads nicely into the follow up. Do you have an example of a partner strategy of that understanding? that maybe flipped from underperforming to overperforming to drive real growth?
Yes, the cha channel partners, so value-added resellers, system integrators, managed service providers, managed security service providers, and a whole bunch of other businesses that sit within Partnerland, they're all going to market themselves, and they all have varying abilities, capabilities, and capacities within their companies. And a lot of these companies are being sought after by ISVs to partner with them with the dream that if they come into our program, they will compound our growth into a hockey stick because they're going to love us so much and they're going to take it and they're going to run with it and we're just going to explode in growth. It's a bit crude to talk about it in that way, but
Mhm.
it's a reality. This is a real expectation that happens. And what we are seeing, the partner programs who win are where the vendor has the investment in their channel teams with the strategic nous and the business acumen who can speak to their partners like business partners and can actively invest in them either by way of advising or upskilling.
Mm.
That is rare because it is so costly to have the people who have that ability. And it is hard to remunerate at that level when some of these ISVs will have thousands and thousands of partners.
Right.
And so cutting through how do we enable real growth within our partners, the most common way we scale partner enablement is we
Mhm.
build a really nice partner portal and we load it up with a whole bunch of sales enablement assets. And we say, here you go, guys, go implement this. And they don't
Mhm.
because they're just as busy as we are. And they are facing the exact same headwinds and they have the same challenges and they are trying to keep up just as much as we are. So where the channel programs that are really winning as a result of the flywheel are understanding where are the hidden costs within my program, because there's a lot of costs that are unnecessary but aren't really thought about. As long as my program is slightly more in the black than the red, then we're winning. But there's a whole bunch of costs sitting there that if we make a couple of hard decisions, we can actually recoup that, but not keep it. We reinvest that into our partners
Mhm.
in a way that is meaningful. And I'm not talking about co-branding a couple of webinars and putting some logos on a deck. I'm talking about the way that guys like Schneider Electric will invest in their partners, where they say, if you're going to partner with us, go build your 12-month strategy and come back to
Mm.
us and
Yeah.
walk us through that 12-month strategy. So they've divorced themselves from the quarterly sales cycle of only looking 3 months in advance. They're saying, come back with a 12-month strategy in the way that you're going to work with us. Sell it to us, essentially. We will blowtorch it together, but we will commit to you and we will actively invest in your strategy if we understand it and can support you in this way. And we will deploy even non-financial resources where and if we can to support you. And so the go-to-market motion moves from a take all our stuff and go sell it on your own to how are we going to market together more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah. Through a partnership. It reminds me of, one of the things that we analyze a business over 5 pillars when it comes to how is it that you can strategically scale, achieve business growth, both organically as well as inorganically through M&A and IPO. But typically things come down to a couple of strategic levers that you can pull. This investment theme that you're talking about, my translation is, if you show me how someone's compensated, in other words, put their compensation plan in front of me, I'll tell you how it is that they're going to behave. And their behavior, the actions that they actually take, that's what's going to drive them, right? That's their performance. It's not the latest innovation moment in product. It's not the latest greatest. How can we keep our associates engaged? And what's a great skill that we should have? And we need to upskill everybody. No, it's how are you paying them? And if you're paying them isn't indicative of the performance that you want, there's a disconnect. So the investment that you're talking about in that 12-month out, what's your strategy? What do you want to be able to achieve? And let's figure out how we can support it through investment, not only dollars, but we'll kind of put our money where our mouth is, but our mouth is going to follow. We'll put some real people behind it. That's a great example. So let's transition and let's bring this thing home. This fourth topic here, even with partners pulling their weight, there's still one universal challenge that I see leaders facing time and again, and it's standing out in a noisy, crowded market. So, topic number four, cutting through noise in crowded markets. Jeremy, great products often get lost in these oversaturated markets. So, what's a poor leader to do? I mean, how can leaders make sure digital marketing cuts through the noise?
There's a there's a soul searching process that needs to happen to answer this. The there there is a commonality across go to markets that organizations are competing at feature level.
Mm.
That we built the best tech, and the best tech is, in our minds, so meaningfully differentiated at feature level that it will compel you to buy or to at least register for a demo.
Hmm.
And that's not a reality because, first of all, we've got a couple of dozen buying committee members who are all motivated by different things. But secondly, the competing at feature level for many organizations cannot meaningfully differentiate you because you have built most of your kit either on the same vendors as everybody else, and you're trying to say that it's somehow different than somebody else, and it's really hard to articulate that
Hmm.
and get cut through. But then secondly, it's really challenging to cut through to a number of people in a buying committee if you're talking technical. And so the features of your products and services generally aren't so compelling or lack the cogency at individual feature level to be meaningfully understood across non-technical business leader decision makers. So we need to pull ourselves out of that and really think from a messaging perspective. First of all, and a messaging strategy is in our mission and in what we envision our reason to exist and how we are delivering value into the organizations we service, that the articulation of that value needs to have the ability to be structured in a way where that can be perceived, understood, and applied to individuals within businesses. So there's that soul searching. But then there's the next question around how do you cut through the noise?
Hmm.
That's a distribution problem. And this is a real issue that every single business needs to deal with, because if we're thinking about content distribution,
Hmm.
or even more simplistically, getting our message in front of the right people,
Yes.
that's crowded, that's noisy, and there's only a certain amount of channels available to us, right? It's and because we're talking in the digital space, there are only certain amount of options in that playbook. We're going to publish a whole bunch of stuff to LinkedIn. We're going to use LinkedIn ads to try to get in front of our ICPs. We're going to do a whole bunch of email marketing, and we're going to run some events, and we're going to run some campaigns, and hopefully people will download some stuff, and we're going to do all this stuff. It is getting harder than ever to do all that stuff, and for that to not only reach the person and capture their attention, but for that attention to have been applied in a way that causes some form of action. And if we are not in the ability to create action as the result of a single touch point, we need to start thinking about our content and the way that we're interacting with people as meaningful moments. And I'm taking that language from research from Canalys and the way that Jay McBain, the chief analyst there, talks about this. We've moved out of marketing as pushing content out and trying to generate touch points. I want you to see a certain amount of ads, and then you'll be aware of us, and we can move you down our very rigid funnel. That doesn't really happen anymore. It can, but it doesn't really happen anymore. What we're moving into a space is, how are we creating moments that have some form of meaningful impact with the people that we're trying to reach? And what is getting harder now more than ever is the amount of meaningful moments that need to occur for someone to put their hand up. And how do those meaningful moments occur in 12, 24, 36 months? And so we need to think about that as a distribution strategy around, how are we creating scenarios to have those moments? If we have the best product, and we are now figuring out how to talk about it in a way that means something to the right people, we need to then invest in how we are talking about their problems and their pain points and their issues and their everything that they're juggling in the context of what we do and solve in our vision and mission, and not be constantly selling, but creating moments of interaction such that we mean more to them than just the actual outcome of the eventual widget that we're going to sell them one day. Right? It's whether that's education, whether that's referrals and networking unlocks, whether that's putting them in scenarios where they can thrive, whether it's creating and facilitating opportunities for them to be the hero in your story. It's rethinking how we go about doing content marketing, or the way that we think about creating long-term relationships, shifting from, I'm going to push content advertising and messages at you, I'm going to try to pull you in and create a long-term sustained interaction with you, knowing that eventually that the right people will buy within that.
Yeah, this is great. This meaningful moment concept is a great one. So the follow-up question, if you had to choose just one lever to create that meaningful moment, be it messaging channels or campaigns, which, from your perspective, have you seen make the biggest difference in breaking through?
It's a really hard question because of how interlinked those are. I would start with channels. Starting with channels forces you to address your messaging.
Yeah.
Because you can see messaging not land in the right channels. And depending on, and by channels, I'm talking about communication channels and the way that you are taking content to market, or the way that you are interacting. If we think about channels, if my target buyer, setting aside the committee, but if the buyer themselves is a CFO, that that CFO is being bombarded all of the time by everybody else within the organization, as well as everyone trying to sell to that person. How am I going to create meaningful moments with a CFO? First, to get on their radar. Second, to be more than just known, but understood. And thirdly, starting a conversation with them that doesn't feel pitch or
Mhm.
salesy, a solutions type of selling. How do I do that if I can't just email my database and filter it for CFOs in the database? And so thinking about channels in terms of how am I effectively and efficiently reaching the people that I want to be in front of in a way that cuts through, like we were talking about, as well as enables further conversations for our salespeople and for different other roles within the organizations to get involved, to land and expand. But answering that is different for different organizations and where they're at in their own life cycle and their go to market and the way that they need to transition. But I would start with channels and use that to blowtorch and affect the messaging. And then once that is coming up to where we need it to be, you can affect the campaigns through that as a result.
No, it's interesting because I'm thinking back to what you shared with us today. You talked a little bit about the strategic doing. You said there's a concept of strategic now. I would say that there might be another strategic moment, and that's in the specificity. Because
Mhm.
what you're talking about, I think is, we often think of this as we need a real sniper shot here. It's got to be a keyhole shot too. Single
Yeah.
bullet with all the things working in perfection, messaging channel and campaign, right? We're going to put the right non-feature oriented, but benefit oriented conversation together in messaging. We're going to hit an individual with the channel. It's omni-channel. We're going to meet them where they want to be met. And the campaign structure, it's just not going to be a short term, maybe an elongated cycle. And I think there's a misperception out there of, well, we don't want to put all of our bags in or all of our money in one bag, right? Or eggs in one nest, call it whatever you want to. We need to have, instead of a single bullet, we need to have a buckshot pattern, Sam. We need to have a multitude of things going out there simultaneously. But I would argue, and based on what it is that you said today, that the third strategy moment, strategic specificity, I think that each one of those buckshot pellets can consist of this appropriate messaging in the appropriate channel with the appropriate campaign, all for that individual customer profile, regardless of how many people are on that committee. So you got me thinking here. Jeremy, thanks for sharing these insights here with us today. Today, we covered what I think are four of the biggest barriers B2B tech leaders and others face in digital marketing. This has been a masterclass. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. And I hope that out there, you've taken notes to create a powerful playbook, especially if you want your marketing to actually deliver results. So, Jeremy, an absolute pleasure having you on the Executive Espresso Break. Where can people get a hold of you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn all day. Jeremy Balius, Balius. And also go to Filament. Filament.digital is our website. You can understand how we are supporting B2B tech businesses, and you can get in touch with me there as well.
Great. Thank you. Before we wrap, I teased you earlier, those of you that have stayed this long, I want to give you out, if you've stayed with us, something special. If what Jeremy and I talked about today resonates with you, if you're staring down the long sales cycle, stalled execution, partners that aren't pulling their weight, or just too much noise in your market, then I want to personally invite you to a private 20-minute strategy session with me. This isn't going to be theory, and it's not some canned program. In 20 minutes, we'll do three things together. First, we'll pinpoint your number one growth barrier that's holding you back right now. Second, we'll build a practical game plan that you can start using immediately. And third, we'll discuss and I'll show you the true cost of waiting because in today's market, delay is the most expensive decision you can make. Here's the catch though. I only do a handful of these each month because they take real prep on my end. And clients who pay me, they pay upwards of $25,000 a day. So if you want in, now's the time. Calendar link will be in the show notes. I've had leaders who've taken me up on this opportunity. They've shared with me that this is the single most valuable 20 minutes they invested for the year. So take advantage of that. Look for the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me here. Sam Palazzolo, Real Strategies, Real Results.